is a digital pet community.
Hello and welcome to Business Sense. I am Ralph Rivas. Today we're talking about cryptocurrencies, NFTs, blockchain, and all the other jargons and buzzwords surrounding digital assets. Joining me on the show is Arianna Simpson, general partner for Anderson Horowitz's massive $2.2 billion crypto fund. The funds help raise funds for Filipino-led Yield Guild games, which of course backs the players of popular play-to-earn game Axie Infinity. Now, Ariana, before we go into all of that, all the investments and all those stuff, I noticed on your Twitter profile that you were quote into crypto before it was cool. So how did that happen?
That's right. And thank you for having me. Very excited to be here. So I fell down the crypto rabbit hole as a result of a trip I took in 2013 around Southern Africa. So I spent time in 6 different countries, including Zimbabwe. And when I was there in 2013, the country was just starting to recover from a very, very bad bout of hyperinflation. So they had recklessly printed money effectively, and that caused a crazy amount of hyperinflation, which really destroyed the economy. And so when I was there, they had recently switched over to the US dollar in order to restabilize the economy, but things were still in a pretty rough shape. And so when I came back to the US, I was thinking a lot about monetary policy and what might be possible in a world in which citizens had an alternative to a hyperinflating currency. And a friend of mine mentioned the Bitcoin white paper to me. He said, well, Bitcoin is deflationary, it has a capped supply. So runaway hyperinflation wouldn't really be possible. And so I said, well, what's Bitcoin? Because I'd never heard of it at the time. And so I started reading about it, doing research, and I pretty quickly became obsessed. It was really obvious to me that there were a lot of ways that Bitcoin might fail, but if it worked, it was going to be a really powerful tool for people all around the world. And in addition to kind of the role it plays now, taking over sort of a type of digital gold position in the world of cryptocurrencies, what it did beyond that is catalyze an entire movement of new technology development with Ethereum and a number of other projects. At this point, hundreds, if not thousands, of really exciting new technologies being built using some of the same underlying technology. And so our focus is really to find and invest in some of the best entrepreneurs building in this category.
Yeah, so I mean, again, really interesting story there. You went outside the country and discovered a lot of things, but cryptocurrency is still a new concept, even years after the crypto craze. So, do you think people are already catching up on it? Do you think that people are already very familiar with what it is? And I mean, me personally, I want to know, where does cryptocurrency draw its value from?
Sure. I think at this point, crypto has really entered the mainstream. It's been really exciting to see the development of the technology over the past 10 or so years. And, the way in which it's now caught on in a really important way across the world. At this point, there are tens, if not hundreds of millions of crypto users all around the world. And so we're seeing it really affecting people's lives in a positive way in all kinds of different environments, which we find super exciting. Um, in terms of value, we think you really have to look back to the technology. I think that's what we're most focused on and most excited about. And we're seeing this technology applied in a number of different ways, whether that's provisioning scarce digital resources like bandwidth and storage, playing games, which we think are actually quite important, and I'm sure we'll get into that in more detail later. But at the root of it, we're seeing blockchains applied in a variety of different use cases that are actually really powerful and, as I said, affecting people's lives in a really positive way across the board.
Yeah, I mean, hearing you, I can really tell that you're really passionate about cryptocurrencies and all that. But before you got into all of this, what were you doing then, and what made you leave that field?
Yeah, so immediately prior to my trip to Zimbabwe, I had been working at a startup in New York. So I definitely had a passion for technology that spanned even before I started working in the field. I think, right after I came back from my trip, I joined Facebook, and I was really so excited about crypto that I tried to get Facebook to do something, but I was a couple years too early. There was no talk of any sort of Facebook crypto projects at the time. But I think what's been incredible for me to see is just really how over the past few years, what seemed like a very fringe industry that might never make it to the mainstream has instead become hugely popular, and is attracting really top talent from all different industries. Incredible designers and engineers and marketers and all kinds of product people are coming into this industry to build. And I think the quality of people and talent that we're seeing in the space has improved dramatically over the past few years. And that's one of the things that makes me most excited about the future of crypto.
Yeah, well, a lot of positive things about crypto, but there are also misconceptions. What do you think are the top misconceptions about cryptocurrency? And how do you correct that?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about, crypto being used for nefarious purposes. I think it's actually incredible to hear the stories of my partner, Katie Hahn, who was a federal prosecutor for many years and actually led the task force, anti-crime task force focused around cryptocurrency. That's actually how she came into the space and kind of how she fell in love with it. And what we're seeing actually is that the vast, vast majority of crypto use cases are extremely positive. And actually, there's much less crime in crypto than there is in the traditional financial system. So, we spend a lot of time working with people across industries, regulators, you know, powerful people across the board to help them try to understand the positive aspects of crypto, which are many, and really see that this technology is incredibly powerful. It's providing jobs for people. It's doing a lot of good in the world. And so that's what we focus on because that's the real story.
Okay, now let's dive into A16Z. It has a 2.2 billion crypto fund. Wow, that's massive. So, how how do you plan to spend this? Where are you putting all this cash, and for how many years?
Well, what we saw in crypto is that until a couple years ago, there really wasn't much of an ability to do growth rounds. So, later stage, larger rounds into crypto companies and projects because the whole industry was so nascent that we were really investing kind of in the earliest seed phases of companies or maybe Series A. But either way, not really deploying large checks. What we've seen now is that because the space has done so well and there are so many promising projects that have now made it to a later stage of maturity, we really wanted to be able to expand the work that we're doing and help support projects through their entire life cycle. So that's sort of the rationale for expanding the fund size. And I think from what we're seeing in the market today, we feel absolutely justified and very excited to have a large sort of war chest to deploy into the space because, as I mentioned, the quality of the talent is very high. The quality of the technology projects we're seeing is super high. And so we've really never been more excited to kind of continue to support entrepreneurs in the space.
Yeah, and of course, one of the entrepreneurs that you're helping back up is the Filipino startup YGG. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, we're super thrilled to be working with YGG. We'd been hearing great things about Gabby and Beryl and what they were doing for some time, and so for us, it's really been incredible to have the opportunity to work with them more closely. I think YGG is just an incredible example of crypto meaningfully improving people's lives. And so, just to kind of zoom out a little bit and explain a bit about what they're doing, during the pandemic last year, obviously a lot of people were put out of work in the Philippines, but not only due to the lockdowns. And so a local gaming entrepreneur, Gabby, began basically loaning out his Axies, which are kind of these cute characters that you need to play a game called Axie Infinity. He would loan them out to other people in the community so that they could start playing the game. Because in order to play, you need to have 3 Axies. And so, this, what became known as a scholarship program, became so popular that they sort of expanded operations and formed YGG. And so, YGG supports at this point thousands of scholars by breeding and creating these in-game assets, providing them to players who then play in the game, earning tokens. And YGG takes a small cut of those, but reinvests most of the profits into growing their operations and continuing to provide jobs and work for people in their communities. So it's an incredibly powerful model. I think it's really just the beginning of what we see as a larger trend of jobs in the metaverse. And we can cover that in a little more detail, I'm sure, in a minute. But I think it's incredibly interesting to see the development of new kinds of work, which historically has been somewhat narrowly defined. But we think in the future is going to have a much broader scope in terms of what we see.
Okay, so let's just make it clear for our audience. No, you don't have a direct relationship with Axie Infinity, but you invested in YGG, who has scholars, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the investment basically means they're gonna have more scholars. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The way we see our role working with YGG is really to help support them and their community in expanding. I think one thing that stood out to us immediately was that YGG was incredibly beloved by their community, and they had such a fervent base of people who were incredibly excited and participating in what they were doing. And so I think one of the things that we as a firm are experts in and have helped companies do over the years is really scale and expand their operations globally. And so, we think YGG already has an incredible sort of beginning story with, like I said, really engaged community, an incredible mission. And so we are really just here to help them bring that to an even bigger stage so that they can provide more jobs and help more people.
Okay, so I just want to remind the audience that we are live. So send in all your questions. This is a rare opportunity for us to have Arianna on the show. Now, I want to ask as well. Axie Infinity is a cute game. I mean, my initial impression to it is that it's basically like Pokemon, but you fight monsters, you breed them, but you earn money, right? So that's pretty interesting. But when you first saw this concept, did you immediately think that this was gonna be a hit, or this was just gonna be one of those fads that's gonna come and go?
Personally, I've been investing in games for years. That was one of the core areas of focus for my fund, Autonomous Partners, even prior to my joining Andreessen Horowitz last year. So, I've long believed in the promise of the category, and I think it's been incredible to see a game like Axie Infinity grow so rapidly and really enable a whole ecosystem of other entrepreneurs and community members, scholars, players to build around it. So from my perspective, that's it's incredibly exciting, and the rate of growth has been really fast. But the trend is not surprising. I think now that Axie has really shown what is possible in this category, I'm super excited to continue seeing what happens in the play to earn world. And more broadly, I think we view games as a super important conduit for hundreds of millions, if not billions, of new users to come into the crypto space. I think historically, crypto has sometimes seemed a bit unapproachable or maybe hard to understand. And so games provide an amazing way for people to start to familiarize themselves with some of the concepts of cryptocurrency in a way that feels more approachable and safer. And especially now that, we're seeing jobs provided, we're seeing a lot of really positive stories coming out of YGG and the Axie community. We're more excited than ever about the possibilities of games changing people's lives for the better.
Yeah, that's interesting. Games for employment. It's another concept that's I think it's gonna take a while for Filipinos to take a grasp. But so far, I guess those that are into Axie Infinity are enjoying themselves with all the earnings. But another question is the volatility of the prices. I mean, everybody's so afraid. Like, for instance, Bitcoin. We saw the price fly, and at the same time, it sunk in this pandemic. So, what are your thoughts on that? And how do you assure people that it's going to be worth it?
There's really no way to predict prices in the short term. So we don't even try to because we think that's a little bit of a fool's errand. What we focus on is kind of the underlying technology and what we think is the long term potential for any of these networks. So that's always been our focus. That's one of the reasons why we're structured as a venture fund as opposed to a hedge fund, which allows us to have a much longer outlook. We're not trading currencies. We're not doing anything in the short term. We are really focused on finding the best projects and companies and supporting them over, a 5, 10, 15-year period. So that's kind of how we think about it. Over time, if you focus on the technology and, educate yourself about the space, we think that's the best way to approach it.
Okay, now going back to your investment, $4.6 million into YGG. Mostly for more scholars, definitely. But did they tell you about targets, or did you set targets for them? I want to know how big this will be by the end of the year, by next year. Tell us a little something about that.
Yeah, we would never come in and set targets for a company. I think our approach as investors is to find incredibly smart, capable entrepreneurs and support them in their journey. But we are not coming in and sort of dictating numbers or anything like that. But what we're excited to do, but what we're super excited to do is work with the team to kind of help figure out how quickly can we sustainably scale this model. As I said, it's so obvious the positive impact that YGG is having on people's lives. So we are very excited to kind of bring that model to the largest number of people possible in the shortest amount of time. Obviously, we want to be thoughtful about how we scale it. But I think one thing that sort of sets YGG apart is the fact that they have so much sort of grassroots community support that a lot of these scaling operations are actually being initiated by the community as well. And we think that's super powerful and really fairly unique. Even within crypto, it's obvious to me that they stand out in terms of how bought in their user base and scholars are. And so we're thrilled to see that. We're always looking for that level of community engagement. And I think that's going to be a really positive driver for YGG as they continue to expand their operations across the world.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I have a lot of office mates that are into NFT games. I'm not, but I'm just looking at this. Not yet, but it's very interesting. But here are some questions from some of my colleagues because they're curious about your thoughts on this one. NFT games, how do you view them? Is it a game or is it a way for people to earn? And is there a balance? I mean, what is it really? What's the goal?
I think it's both. The incredible thing about crypto games is they don't need to be just one thing. I think it's rather limiting to try to put them in a box. I think They are a way for people to earn, but they're also just a really fun time. Like some people are playing professionally, some people are playing as a form of just pure play entertainment. And both of those use cases are perfectly valid. So from our perspective, the beauty of it is the fact that they can be more than one thing at one time. And that's actually what makes the community more robust, because it's not everyone competing or participating only for one purpose, but rather, people are playing for a number of different reasons. And we think that's super exciting.
Okay. Uh, okay. Now, here's another question. Another concern is that the energy consumption of cryptocurrency, NFTs, things like that. So, do you see it being reduced in the short term, or is this going to be a long-term issue that the crypto space will have to deal with?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because I think that's definitely a popular misconception. The key of the cornerstone issue here is the consensus model that different blockchains use. So proof of work, which is what Bitcoin uses, has definitely been criticized with some reason, for being more energy intensive. But fortunately, the industry has really taken it upon itself to figure out more sustainable methods for operating blockchains. And so when proof of stake was developed, this basically removed the need for energy consumption in order to effectively run these blockchains. So, something like Ethereum, which started out on proof of work, is transitioning to proof of stake. Most new blockchains that are being launched today are already proof of stake. So, while proof of work was a very significant part of the industry a couple years ago, going forward, we think it's going to trend down to almost zero. And so, that really eliminates the issue of energy consumption practically entirely. So, that's our focus. We're super excited to see kind of the industry having moved itself forward in actually such a short period of time.
Okay, now we have a question from one of our viewers, basically asking about Axie Infinity's registration status in the Philippines. Now, I know you're not an expert on this one, but the concern on regulation is another, concern about NFTs and crypto and all those, all the other things related to digital assets. Now, isn't this so risky on the part of those that will be putting in money for these games, these digital assets? Because to be honest, regulators here are still trying to find that balance in. I mean, not just in crypto, but also in fintech. All of these are very, very new concepts. So, how do you think will that affect the industry in general? Uh, Traditional institutions being somewhat reluctant and may even ban totally these new innovations.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, regulation is not my area of expertise, so I'll leave it to some of my colleagues who are experts in regulation to comment more extensively on that. What I will say is, we're investing very heavily in building out a team of experts, in some cases, ex-regulators, lawyers, folks with deep compliance and regulatory expertise, to really help both our portfolio companies and the industry at large navigate some of these regulatory questions. From our perspective, it's very important that there be, rules of the road and that entrepreneurs be put in a position where they can effectively follow them. But the regulations need to make sense. And so we're spending a lot of time with regulators, helping them to understand sort of the nuances of the industry so that they can provide more effective rules that don't stifle innovation, but allow things to flourish instead.
Yeah. So, what's your outlook on the crypto space in the medium and long term? How big will this industry get? I mean, it's big right now, but how big will it get?
I'm incredibly optimistic about the potential here. I have been devoting my life to this space for a number of years and have no intention of going anywhere else. I think like I said, the quality of founders, and not just founders, but people working in the space at this point is incredibly high. And I find that extremely inspiring on a daily basis. So I have no doubt that we're heading in kind of a terrific direction. So in terms of how big will it get, we believe that crypto will end up touching pretty much all industries in the same way that the internet powers all kinds of businesses that wouldn't be necessarily defined as tech businesses. We think that eventually crypto will become part of the technology stack, whether that's incorporating tokens or on-chain governance or different pieces of sort of the crypto infrastructure stack. And at that point, it will be really touching most of the technology sector at large and businesses even beyond that. So from our perspective, it's super important, and I really can't imagine a more exciting industry to be working in.
Okay, now I want to circle back to your journey here on devoting basically your life at this point on crypto, but you didn't start on crypto. So, what's your advice for those who want to take a jump? I mean, not particularly on crypto, but those having this quarter life crisis on their careers, for instance. I'm 31. You're in your 30s. You just turned 30 amid this pandemic. So, what's your advice for our age group and even the Gen Zs that are yet to join the workforce?
I would encourage people to really dive right in. I think sometimes there's a tendency to want to wait for permission or feel like, oh, well, I don't have a qualification for that. I think there's so much that you can learn on the internet at this point, and especially in a new emerging space like crypto. Everybody's learning, and a lot of the rules are being written as we go. So it's really a greenfield opportunity for people who are excited and want to work hard to come in and build or do something really interesting without needing any particular academic background or any other qualifications of any kind. So I would just encourage people to get started. I think oftentimes that's the hardest part, but once you get going, it's pretty exciting to see the momentum of what you can build with kind of just a passionate group of people, regardless of whether there's any formal qualifications or not.
Okay, and on that note, thanks so much, Arianna Simpson, General Partner for A16Z, and I'm Ralph Rivas. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching. This has been another episode of Business Sense.